Welcome, welcome, welcome. How are you doing today? I'm doing well too. Thank you. I am so happy you've chosen to join me today. I appreciate every time you do. It's awesome. And so today I want to talk about, following your dreams, chasing your dreams, whatever you want to do. And how hard it is. Super hard actually. And so I'm going to talk to an author, and she's an award-winning author, is currently writing a series of books. First one's been out now for almost 10 years, I think, and the seventh one just came out a couple months ago. And so we're going to talk about how she chased her dream and how hard it is and how much curiosity it took her to get there and how much grit and determination and dedication. And hopefully along the way, we all can pick up a little insight into writing books. It's a process I've never been able to wrap my mind around. And maybe the process of just, learning and questioning and curiosity and feedback and moving forward in our lives. So I'm ready to do this. Are you? Yeah, let's do it.
Welcome. You are listening to I Have Questions with Michael Ruland.
Have you ever asked a question, been in a classroom, been curious, or ever wanted to teach and learn? Then you're in the right place. Because I have questions. I am very passionate about being curious, about being educated, and most importantly, about having questions. Join me on this journey as I share stories, talk to some fun and inspiring people, gain insights to being a better teacher, better student, and maybe even a better human. I am very passionate about being curious, about being educated, and most importantly, about having questions. I hope you're ready because
I have questions. All right. Well, as I stated, I want to talk about chasing our dreams. I find this such an interesting topic because, growing up, I don't think I had dreams of what I wanted to be when I grew up. I really didn't. I think I was just content with what I was doing. As I've shared over and over, I was very ADHD. I was dyslexic. I loved the social aspect of school. I wasn't horrible at school. I wasn't good at school. I wasn't horrible at school though either. And I just, I don't know that I had any idea. I went to college, changed my major on a whim, failed out of college the first time, went back to school, went back to school, went back to school. Finally, stumbled onto my dream. And so for me, it was certainly a stumble. It was something though that I had to, and I had this inkling that I would like being a teacher, and I stumbled into it. But lots of people stumble into their thing. This isn't 100 years ago or so when people worked the same job for their whole life and pass that job down to their children, well, their sons, because we were a very sexist world and country, that's for sure. And so, nowadays people change careers and jobs all the time. And I think it's I don't know if that's good or bad. That's for you to decide. How's that? But I think there are certain things we can do to chase our dreams. And I'll be frank with you. The most important couple things in my mind is curiosity, questioning, and learning. And if you've got all three of those things going for you, you can chase your dream or dreams and go for it. And so I want to talk to a lady today who chased her dreams, and it was not a straight road for her. And I'm very excited. So I think we should get going. Should I introduce her? Let's introduce her. Awesome. Here we go. All right, as promised, today's guest. Well, today's guest I haven't talked to in forever, but I will say this: having talked to her a little bit leading up to this, it kind of feels like we just meshed back in, which is amazing and a little crazy to me always when that happens. But so today's guest, I think, is best known for playing Veda Louise Simmons in the wonderful play of Harvey.
Oh my gosh.
Well, probably not worldwide known, but she still knocked that role out of the park back in, I think it was 1983 or so. She happens to be a fashion designer who decided she loved writing and became a journalist. Moved back to California way back when and hashed that stuff out. Now she has moved back to Max, North Dakota, and is an award-winning journalist and author of a critically acclaimed series called In Time with Kendra Donovan. I'm so excited to talk to her about this. The 7th book of that series, which is called Echoes in Time, was recently released. I happen to know her as someone who graduated a year before I did at Max High School. She was actually a student. I was actually not. Her claim to fame is she's the sister of 3 crazy brothers.
True.
True. One of very true. One of whom was a classmate and good friend of mine. And he and I spent an awful lot of time growing up. And her mom and dad were nothing but the best to me, and I always will appreciate that. And after all these years, I am so pleased to catch up with Julie McElwain. Julie, welcome to I Have Questions. How are you?
I am doing really well. Thank you so much for inviting me. I really appreciate it.
Of course. As you know, I say this quite a bit, but this crazy little excursion of mine, if nothing else, has given me a chance to catch up with people that I should never have lost contact with. But times were different back then. You know, if you lost one phone number back in our day, you were done.
Yeah,
right.
Very true.
So I say this a lot. Social media has certainly, I think, improved our lives in that way. That's for sure. So,
Right.
All right. Are you ready?
I am ready.
I hope so, because you know what? I
have questions.
I have questions.
I have questions.
I have questions.
I have questions.
I pity the fool that doesn't have questions, which I do.
Because I have questions. So, Julie, I've been talking about chasing after our dreams and either finding them or being on a path when something we didn't even realize was a dream comes along, and then we go for it. So I would just like to dive deep into your writing and learning path to being an award-winning author. And can you kind of give us the 10,000-foot vision of your time from basically NDSU and beyond, and how it's shaped your writing career? How's that?
Oh, there you go. Okay. You don't ask for much, do you?
Nope, I don't.
No. It was very interesting because in some ways, even though I have been writing all my life, because I love to read, most authors do. And when I read Nancy Drew way back in 3rd or 4th grade, I started writing my own Nancy Drew series. So That's when I started writing. But it never occurred to me that this is something I could actually do as a living. So I didn't even really consider it. At the same time, I also did a lot of art as well, and sold things. And so I had the artistic thing going on. And back in those days in school, we had home ec. So I learned to sew. And I thought, you know what? A fashion designer. That's what I want to be. I want a fashion designer. But I always knew that when I would go for that major, I wanted another major just to balance it out. And anyway, so I went to NDSU, North Dakota State University, and enrolled in textiles and clothing, and that's the fashion design department. That was my what I was doing. And then I thought, okay, what's the next major? I don't know. And again, all this time I'm still writing on the side. I'm writing my own books and whatever. It's just the journey. I was continuing that journey. Then I decided, there's a journalism, they have a journalism course or whatever. So I enrolled in that, Journalism 101. And I really enjoyed it. They automatically send your articles to the student newspaper.
Okay.
And they contacted me and said, you know what? You're actually a good writer. Do you want to come and work for us? So it kind of evolved from there. And by the time I graduated NDSU, I decided what I wanted to do. I had basically a fashion design major, or a textiles and clothing major, and a journalism degree, a print journalism degree. So I wanted to combine that. And there was 2 newspapers I used to read in college. One was Women's Wear Daily, which is huge. It's out of New York City. And the other one was California Apparel News, which was out of LA. And I was like, well, I'm going to New York City. I mean, who wouldn't? Who wouldn't want to go to New York City? And my parents were like, okay, hold on. They're like, your brother is out in LA right now because he was working. My brother Jeff was working there, my older brother, and they had a lot of friends out in LA. My dad used to go in the winters and work out there for this one company that he was friends with, the owner. And anyway, so they're like, nobody in New York City, but we know people in LA.
Yeah. And so, back then, that was a thing because there was no connections otherwise, right?
Exactly. I mean, yeah. I mean, even long distance phone calls cost money,
Right.
So anyway, I ended up in LA, and then I got a job and, wherever to try to, as I sent my resume out. And interestingly enough, and this is how life is sometimes, as you well know, there was an ad for California Apparel News that I used to that I used to read in college. So I applied for it. And it was interesting because the editor, when I went in, she said, I almost didn't call you in because you live in Anaheim and that's so far away, which it's 30 miles probably. But I mean, with LA traffic.
Right. And the way we grew up, 30 miles was just the start.
Exactly. That's what I was like, well, so what? I mean, I didn't understand that.
Yep.
And granted, 30 miles out there could be 2 hours, because the traffic is so crazy. But at that time, how can I say it? At that time, it was probably about 40 minutes to get into LA, or 45. Okay. By the time I left Anaheim to move to Long Beach, it actually became an hour and a half. Oh, so, man. Yeah. And Long Beach, interestingly enough, too, when I started in Long Beach going in, it was about 40 minutes. And by the time I switched over, I got another job where I could work out of my home, but that became an hour and a half. Oh. So the traffic it kind of gets you down after a while.
It's a thing.
It is a thing. But I ended up working at this fashion trade newspaper. It was great. I had, it was probably about 9 years or 10 years. I had a great time. I mean, and traveled all over the world, seeing things and writing. I know. I did miss out when I left. Everything's paid for.
Right. Yes. Cool. So let's get to the crux of it. So you, as I introduced you, you are author of book after book after book. And, as North Dakotans, all us Max people know Julie McElwain and, In Time series with Kendra. And so your first book was called Murder in Time. And, you're writing for a publication in LA. And as you said, you write on the side all the time. But how I want to know, I don't care if anybody else listening wants to know, I want to know, how did this book become a thing for you? The first book, did it start with Nancy Drew? Because in a sense,
yes,
similar-ish.
Their mysteries have always been my thing, basically. So yes, I I mean, the interest, the writing was there, and writing it's a journey. It's a long journey, and it's filled with a lot of highs and lows. And when it came to like journalism, I was lucky and I did well in, but with writing, like I guess I spent it seems like probably most of my life, if I looked at the years, most of my life writing. A lot of times I would get up to chapter 6 and the idea would just go away. So it took a long time for me to actually complete a book, to complete a manuscript. And then you have to go through the very grueling process of sending it out. If you want to be traditionally published, you need an agent. Most traditionally published people will not even look at your stuff. They want to go through an agent. And that's actually harder to get sometimes than the actually publisher.
Wow.
So I would often send out books, and there was 2 complete manuscripts, mysteries, that were rejected. And again, this is when I was working as a reporter. I was again on the side. I was writing. Yeah. And so I had this idea. Well, actually, I got picked up. I had this one children's book agent. I had this idea for a children's book, and I got an agent for it. I actually got an agent, which eventually that all went away and stuff like that. But she's like, well, what else do you want to do? And I said, to be honest, I always envisioned me as an adult mystery writer as opposed to a children's book writer.
Okay.
Not that I don't have interest there, but I've always envisioned that. And she goes, well, I have a friend who's an agent. Why don't you send her what you're doing? So I did my last complete manuscript before Murder in Time. The Murder in Time was not done at this point. I sent it. She looked it over and she came back and said, you know what? Well, she told my agent, because she's got talent. She's got the writing's good. But in this day and age, a mystery just doesn't cut it. You have to have a hook. You can't just have a dead body. You're trying to find the murderer. You have to have a hook. And I'm like, oh my God. Okay. For about 10 years, I had this idea of having a brilliant FBI agent, a little, quirky or whatever, dysfunctional family here, but a brilliant FBI agent who is suddenly transported into the past, into 1815.
So this was just a percolating idea.
This is something I've had for a long time.
Okay.
And I mean, partly because it kind of combined all my interests. I love history. I love history. I love mysteries, and I do like time travel. So all of this, it was combining, and I had this idea, but I knew how much research was involved for something like this. And in truth, I was kind of intimidated, and I was just like, oh God, I don't want to go, I didn't want to go down that road and stuff. But when she said that, I'm like, okay, that book has a hook. That book has a hook. It's, because I've seen a lot of time travel books that are romance books, but I had at that time, I had not seen a lot that were mystery. So anyway, my idea was to put this brilliant FBI agent back into Regency England, basically, and which is the start of the Industrial Revolution. I liked that there's a lot of it's the beginning of the modern age, because the factories and technology was starting to come, but there's a lot of parallels between our time and then, because people were afraid. They were afraid of the factories. We're afraid of AI. We're afraid, we've been afraid of a lot of things. And it's very interesting for me to really do this research, because you see so many parallels between our time and that time.
History repeats itself.
It really does.
It really does. Yeah.
That's, and it's almost a calming influence, because sometimes you go, oh my God, what's happening? And it's like, oh, wait a minute, that happened then. Okay. Yep. It's everything happens. So everybody can, but so anyway, so it took me about maybe a couple of years actually to write it and go through it and how I wanted it.
But you had been really percolating that.
Yes.
For a decade.
Yes. So I just having to sit down and do it.
So this could be just a yes or no answer, quite frankly, but you decide. In your mind, leading before you finished Murder in Time, the first one, was it a series in your head already?
Yes.
Okay, so you already was it a series in your head before you started actually A Murder in Time?
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
okay.
I thought it could be a series. Yeah.
Wow, that's some visualization at its finest right there. So I mean, here's the deal. My questions today, Julie, are just me going. I I don't know how the process works, but I'm super curious. So this question is, this series has 7 books now.
Right.
7? Did I get that? 6? No,
Yes.
7.
7. Yep. I have to
Seven.
look myself. But yeah. Yeah.
Has 7. I, I have to know. And this isn't going to be a yes or no, so you have to explain why.
Huh.
Was the first one, A Murder in Time, harder to write than your last one, which is Echoes in Time?
That actually is a great question.
Well, thank you.
It is. It's a great because honestly, you'd think it would get easier, but it doesn't. And in fact, I mean, it was very hard, mainly because I had all these ideas, for the first book. So just and creating the characters and and knowing where they're going and setting things up, that was very, pretty difficult. But this book in particular, it took me a lot longer than I thought to write because you can't forget there's through lines. There's through lines
Yeah.
from the very beginning that happened. Like, Kendra being a modern day woman back there. I mean, they did not even have pens. They had quill, ink, ink and
Yeah.
quill. And she's used to like computers and typing and texting and all this stuff. And so everything's so slow. And that is a through line that she's not going to suddenly go, okay, everything's fine now. It's going to drive her crazy no matter what, no
Yeah.
matter where she's at. But you don't want to repeat, like it's very hard because you want to touch on these points because you can't forget them,
Yeah.
but you don't want to go so thoroughly in that people who do read the books are going, well, I
Wait a
know
second.
this. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm like,
I've been
this
down
is
this
boring.
road. Yeah.
Exactly. So it's kind of a delicate balancing act. And plus you've got character because the thing I really found interesting about writing a series and why I wanted to do it is I see them, every mystery is a standalone. In every book, there's a standalone mystery. But what brings, I think, a lot of people back time and time again to series are the characters. They start loving those characters and they want to know where they're going next.
Yeah.
And, with Kendra, it's not just Kendra, but, you start developing other sub characters and they start having their own plots. So you're trying to figure out how to move it forward, but also be accurate to that time in some ways. And, so,
Yeah.
I thought it would be a lot easier by now to write, but no, it's not.
So that's really interesting hearing you talk about your series like that. And I hadn't even thought of this, but I am not a good reader. I think it's a bunch of things, and I've covered them on this before. I have dyslexia. Didn't know it till I actually started teaching, and then I'm like, what is wrong with me? A little ADHD, and then I also visualize so intensely that I think when I read, so much of my energy goes into visualizing it, right? And it gets hard. But one of the first series that I read, and I've read it a couple times, and I had no idea why, but I think you just hit on it, was the Clan of the Cave Bear.
Oh, yes.
It's exactly what you just said, where it has a through line, and you do want to know where the next step of that character is. So that's super. So now back to the question as I take a right turn, as I do. So what you said actually it matches up perfectly with what I want to ask is I just, in my brain, I can't even imagine all the parts and pieces. So without, I mean, you go as deep as you want on this, but do you just write organically, or are you I have a whiteboard with timelines and outlines and tree roots and
Yeah.
or how, what is your writing style? I mean, I'm curious.
Well, I'll be honest. I've said that to a lot of people, because supposedly there's two, authors are either plotters, they call them, so they plot everything out,
Okay,
and then
right.
there's the pantsers, where they're kind of doing it out of the seat of their pants.
Okay.
My personality would be a plotter, but my writing style is a pantser. So
Really?
yeah, I do have, like, when I think of something, I kind of have the ending. Like, I know I want them to get to this stage and do this. And sometimes I have points throughout, but then it's me sitting down and just kind of figuring out how I can move this character or these characters to this next stage, and how to do it.
Got it.
And yeah.
Yeah, you know, I was just in my mind, I'm thinking the only way to pull it in my mind, the only way I would have been able to pull it off would literally be to have a room-sized whiteboard with connections and lines everywhere, right? Because it's like, wow, there's so much going on there.
It
All
might
right.
help me if I do that.
Well, I'm going with you're successful with the way you're doing it. So, um, so as people may or may not know, we're both from a tiny area. We went to a high school where I don't know how many were in your class. Joel's and mine had 16 kids.
Okay. I
Yours
was
was,
bigger,
yeah,
26.
26. So ginormous, right? So we went to small places, and both of us left. One of us went back because they're crazy, I think, and like snow. I don't know about you. Um, so as I was thinking about that, and I'm thinking about your books, I have this question, and it's also a yes or no question, but I'm not going to let you get away with just a yes or just a no. The question is Kendra Julie?
No.
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 Okay.
I cause yeah, no, I had a great, as you said, my parents,
Yeah.
my brothers, that's a different story,
No,
but
we know that.
yeah, but yeah, I always say, because I do think as a journalist, you have to kind of have some thick skin, because you get stuff, and it makes you, like, my brothers made me strong. They made me
Yeah.
strong. But my parents were wonderful. My dad was
Yes.
wonderful. And so, and Kendra, which, to be honest, was a very deliberate choice on my part. She had to
Okay.
come from a very dysfunctional family. And, because, I did not want, I don't know how to say it. I guess I did not want, like, if she's going to be back in the past, what's happening here, when she's back in the past, she's actually finding a family that she never
That's
had.
part of it. Yeah.
And what I find fascinating, and I can't say that I had this all worked out before I did anything, but it's developed, where I start realizing that, because she's back in the past, in the future, or not future, in the present, she can be an independent lady without needing anybody. And she was kind of abandoned by her parents. So she became that, very guarded, very protected, but she doesn't need anybody. You can live your life in this day and age, and you really don't need somebody to, if you have a job and you can clothe yourself, whatever. But back there, women didn't even have the right to vote. And she was mistaken as a lady's maid first. But to be honest, I think, because she's in probably her most vulnerable state that she's ever been in, she allows herself, she almost is forced to open herself up to people, to have relationships, because she never really did before.
That's awesome. So you wrote a couple of the books while you're living in California,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
you've written at least one or two while you've moved back to Max.
Yes, actually, I'm trying to think. I might have written all of them. Actually, I think I did all five, the first five in California and having
Okay.
another job. Then Ripples in Time, that's the sixth one. Might have started out there and then I finished
Okay.
it here.
Oh, thank
Mhm.
goodness.
Okay.
Because this would have ruined my last question.
Oh, okay.
So, whew,
I
good.
know.
I don't have to think of a last question on the fly here. So, um, I, like I said, I've thought about this question, but I'm still not sure how to actually ask it. But I'm going to. As a writer, I mean, I think about, I paint, or I used to paint a lot. Now I don't paint a lot, but where I was actually affected how I painted. Like, I've been lucky enough to be up in Alaska in the middle of summer, and I painted one night at 2 a.m. when it was completely daylight out, right?
True, yeah.
And so because of that, I guess my question, knowing that you have written those books in two different, completely, like, holy crap, completely different places, not just geographically, does the environment that you're in at that moment affect your storyline or your writing? So, I mean, I know that when you're writing, you're sitting in an office and a computer
Right.
and zoned in, but the atmosphere and the people you're around and the area, right? I mean, Max and Long Beach probably share nothing in common.
I'm trying to think.
They have the
Well,
sun. They have the sunrise and set, but I think over that's probably about it, right? So I mean, does environment affect your writing?
You know what? In terms of the actual, no, I'm going to say, okay, actually, I can make it very simple. It really doesn't. Because I was going to say, um, people around me, because sometimes people have say something that go, oh, that gets me thinking about, well, this
Right.
would be interesting to put in or whatever. But to be honest, people, no matter where where you go, they do that.
Okay.
Um, I thought, because there's this really, I love this one writer, Tess Gerritsen. She does, she does the Rizzoli and Isles books. It was a series, not really a lot of like the books, but she was actually in Hawaii when she moved to Maine.
Oh, well,
And similar, very similar. But she said, Maine is great for writers because it's winter, stormy. What else are you going to do? And I thought it would be much even better for me because, same thing.
yeah.
But I have my family around and I do tend to get caught up in things or
Sure.
distracted a lot more easier. So
Yeah.
but in terms of what Kendra's going through, because she's in England
Yeah.
in the 1800s, and a lot of things I get, I do a lot of research, so it really is, it's all
Got
here.
it. So you very, very much transport everything to where Kendra is, and
Yes,
you could sit on the moon and it wouldn't affect.
absolutely.
Okay, that makes
Yeah.
sense. Cool. All right. Well, those questions, I had to actually work on those things. Whew, I'm tired.
You did a
So
great job.
so this part is quite frankly time for my curious questions, they're called.
Okay.
And I won't lie to you, one of them, so I started these, I think, in early December.
Okay.
So quite a few shows ago. But I won't lie to you, one of them was written a little bit with you in mind. So
Okay.
you'll know which one too, by the way. All right. So curious questions, one word answers, sentence answers, whatever floats your boat. Favorite holiday?
Christmas.
Christmas. A place that you personally absolutely need to visit within the next 10 years?
Ooh. Um, The only reason that's hard, I usually have visited the places I've wanted to visit, you know. I, I would like to go back to Ireland, which I loved,
Okay.
you know. Um,
Does the name McElwain have anything to do with that, or?
That's well, yeah, true. Although I've been up to Scotland. In fact, this
Okay,
sweater is from Scotland. I
got
bought
it.
it when I was in Scotland, and I could never wear it when I was in California because it's
No.
wool. It was so hot.
Yeah.
So here I can wear it. And I think the McElwain started in Scotland and
You're
probably moved out to
Scottish. Okay,
Ireland. Yeah, and then
gotcha.
from Ireland to America.
Awesome. All right. So, a time period in the history or future of the universe that you would like to visit one day, and you can't say 1800s England.
Oh, okay. Because yeah, clearly, wow. I mean, it's interesting. You know what? Maybe I go into the future, like 200 years into the future, just because.
Yeah.
I mean, I love history in the past, but it's pretty grim. Unless I got to be very wealthy.
Right.
But yeah, no, I'd probably go into the future just to see. You know,
Yeah.
I have great hope for a lot of things in the future. Like some of the science that's happening with medicines. You know, I actually think, you know, a lot of things will
Yeah.
be cured. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Awesome. I like that. All right. So, I'm going to guess this is probably an unfair question, but it is what's written. So, it is what it is. So, favorite book you have ever read?
Oh, that I've ever read.
Yeah.
And that is, well, it's so hard because look, and yeah,
Uh-huh.
wow. Okay, well, you know what? I will go because it's so beautiful. I mean, you know, I sub sometimes at the local school because I
Okay.
needed to get out, just
Yeah.
not just be behind my computer. And they were reading this book, and so I read it all over again. And I'm just like, oh, I loved it again. To Kill a Mockingbird
Yeah.
I loved that book, and I mean, Scout. I'm sorry. I
Yeah.
just loved seeing her grow. You know, it's a great book.
It's, our school still uses it as well. Yeah,
Yeah,
it legitimately in my mind is a classic. So,
it really is. You
yeah,
know,
I always kind of joke, I was not good in school. I didn't care about any of that studying stuff, but when I went back before I became a teacher, I was an educational assistant for 3 years. I went back to see, one, I wanted a job like that, and then two, to see if I really wanted to be a teacher before I put all my energy into doing that.
right?
And my second time through high school, when I was in my late 30s, was amazing because I got to read all of those books because I worked in the special ed department and I helped those kids. And yeah, To Kill a Mockingbird landed on my list of, yeah, I'll read this one every single semester,
Yeah,
and because it hits for some reason. So I like that choice.
100%.
All right, well, you're back home, and I know you are not a cook, but
Yeah.
the last question: what is the one food that makes you think of home? And this would have been a better question when you were in Long Beach.
I know
but-
exactly. And okay, you would know if I said lutefisk, but I'm not going to say lutefisk.
Okay.
Even though that does remind me of home and you know
Yeah.
all this stuff. And what I like, and I can't eat it very much now and stuff because you know carbs and all that.
Yeah.
But Nefla soup, I love Nefla soup,
Oh.
isn't it? Don't you think about that?
Sarah still makes it a few times a year.
Oh,
Yeah.
see?
Bless her.
I know. Yes. If people have not had it, I would
You're missing out.
recommend it. I don't know where you would get it that much. So
No, you have to drive back to Bismarck and go to Kroll's restaurant, I guess.
Maybe that's it. Or your wife, so she does it from scratch.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. She worked in a restaurant when we lived up in Candu, North Dakota. And I was there too, but I don't know that I worked very hard. But she Nefla soup, shockingly,
Oh,
was a staple. And I don't know that she liked it, but she was really good at it. So she's just kept that recipe, and
yes.
I get to be the recipient of such a thing. All right. So after Nefla soup, which I'll have to talk Sarah into making, your turn, Julie. The show is now yours. Did I miss something? Or is there anything you would like to add? Or do you have a question for me?
You, um, you know what? I mean, I feel you covered, you covered
Yay!
it very well. I do feel like you and I are both, like I said, again, we've got this creative thing going on with the creative, juices. I will ask you something that has been asked me, but I will ask you, or, like like if somebody, in life is, they are, because I have a lot of people saying, I'm interested in writing, but I can't, I just won't be. It's just, I will never get anywhere. I mean, there's a, everybody is very hard on themselves.
Yep.
So what would you tell, especially since you were a teacher, a student who may be interested in the arts,
Yep.
but is insecure, or like, how would you advise them to go on,
Yeah.
or would you advise them to go on? I don't know. I mean, what?
You know what? I totally would. That's a great question. I will, I have often thought about this, actually. And I don't know, I've professed to say I was not very good at school. And I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I will say I've always had a little bit of the art bug in me. I mean, I to this day I still catch grief. My uncle bought me a 20 gauge shotgun. I don't even know how old I was, right? Sixth grade, something. And the first thing I did was wood burn a scene of a goose and a pond on the stalk. And then I
Wow.
painted it, right?
Wow.
Well, I mean, you can attest to this. Growing up a farm boy in Max, North Dakota, you weren't an artist.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I think it would have been really cool. I did not know that. So I think
Yeah,
that's really cool.
and I watched it wasn't even Bob Ross yet. The guy's name was Bill Alexander. He was the original PBS artist
Oh,
who did Wet on Wet. And my mom says I watched him religiously all the time. Right? And so I as I look back, I had that art
right.
mindset, and I never pursued it because
Mm-hmm.
it was not a thing as a farm boy in
Right.
Max, North Dakota, right? And so I've always kind of had that burning in me. And so when I started teaching, it kind of coincided with me starting to paint as well. And so I made it a point with kids to push making mistakes, because part of me thinks
Right.
that the reason we don't go for these things is we are afraid we're going to fail.
100%.
Right? And so I whenever I talk to any of my old students, who weirdly I keep in touch with a lot of them, which
I think
thankfully it's so cool. We talk about, I didn't care about mistakes. In fact, I encouraged them. And the young lady that she's not young anymore. Sorry, Kenzie. The old student I had that I just did a podcast that I released this week. That was actually our theme was making mistakes and overcoming them, and how I pushed kids to continually deal with mistakes and get over it, right? And so that is really what it's about to me. And what I would tell anybody is stop being afraid of making mistakes, right?
Yes.
And who cares?
Right.
Nobody cares.
Well, the sad,
that.
But that's the sad thing is the young people and my younger self. That's what I would tell my younger
Yeah.
self too, because when you're younger, you do care so much more. As you get older, you go, "Oh my God, why did I care so
Yeah.
much?"
Yeah. And it's a thing,
Ridiculous.
right? It is a thing. And so, so I do that. And, when I first started painting, I think it's been about 25 years ago when I started. Uh, I, I literally made a conscious decision that no matter what I thought of the painting when I was done,
Right.
I was going to post it on
Excellent.
social
Okay.
media, right?
Uh-huh.
Because I learned fairly quickly that my eye is completely different than anyone else's eye.
Right.
And I wanted people to go, yeah, that's not quite right, Mike, because that was the only way I was going to get better at it. So,
Right.
yeah. So, I mean, your question hit me right in the wheelhouse of what this whole thing is about,
Right.
learning to be curious and learning to question and learning to make mistakes and not really caring. Or maybe it's not about caring, understanding that mistakes are an every minute operation, and how we react to them is what keeps us moving. So,
Yes. I
yeah.
like
Does that work?
I think that's excellent. How we react to things in everything, how we
Yeah.
react to something. It's
Yeah,
very important.
it is. So, all right, Julie McElwain, with all the computer issues we had, Lord knows if I can stitch this thing together. And hopefully I don't have to call you up and redo this.
Okay. Well, no worries. No matter what, it's all been enjoyable.
I appreciate you joining me and us getting to reconnect after all these years. And I wish you nothing but the best.
Thank you so
And
much.
we will definitely stay in touch. So
All right.
thanks for joining
Same
us.
to you. All right. Thank you
Awesome.
so much. I appreciate it.
So good to reconnect. So, quick little thing. If you are interested in checking out Julie's books, I put a link down in my bio. You can go to Julie McElwain. She has her own website where you can buy all 7 books or one of them, but I would go with all 7. Start with Murder in Time. It's the first one and gets you going. All righty. So, yeah, awesome. Thanks, Julie. So nice reconnecting. It's always nice reconnecting. I think I say that every single week. But I am a people person, very social. I do think I'm an introvert, which is weird that I think that, and yet I really love talking to people. So probably not an introvert. Anyway, thank you, Julie. Appreciate it. I hope you found that interesting. I did. It's something I've always been curious about. I'm like, I should write a book. No, I shouldn't. Number one. Number two, I really have no idea how to start. But I just found it very interesting and very curious. So appreciate you joining me on that. Speaking of joining me, if you like what I do, please subscribe. Go to YouTube, hit subscribe, and then while you're there, hit like and put in a comment. I always try to answer my comments. There aren't very many yet, but please do that. If you want to touch base with me or be a guest or tell me I'm crazy and not doing it right, well, that one, you'll have to join a long line, but you can still do that. Go to my email, which is ihavequestions2025@gmail.com, and drop me a note. I would love to chat with you. With that, I hope you have a great rest of your week or start of your week whenever you're listening to this. I hope that you are on your path to your dream. And remember to be there, question, learn, and enjoy. We are all so tied up in knots. So enjoy. All right. Have a great week. So, P.S. So part of my little forced retirement is I don't have the energy to do much. I get headaches, light bothers me, sound bothers me. Yeah, it's not cool. But I've taken to watching some short YouTube clips here and there, and Sarah thankfully likes doing that too. So she hasn't lost her mind with me yet. But I was recently reading a book. I think I shared with you, Brian got me for Christmas, and about Stonehenge, and it really got me thinking about previous civilizations. And I was looking, and right now, and it's subject to change because we find new stuff all the time, and by we I mean smart people, scientists, archaeologists. But currently, one of the oldest cities found has been Jericho, the city of Jericho. It's about 11 to 12,000 years old, and the original parts of it that they found. And I found it interesting for thousands of reasons, to be honest. But Jericho, that they found that they've dated now to about 10,000 BC, had a moat and a walls around it, right? And we all know about moats and walls and castles and protection and all that. Well, the scientists believe that the moats and walls around Jericho were actually not protection at first from humans. They don't know, obviously, but not protection from humans, but protection from floods and maybe wild animals. They found in Jericho and some of the cities around there that a couple thousand years after Jericho, that they've dated Jericho to, houses started being built up on platforms, and they think it was again for fighting flash floods and animals who were trying to eat them, right? And so I find it interesting that moats, it was to divert water from their houses, because back then they built their houses out of mud, and we can all imagine a flood would pretty much wipe away the whole village then. So I find it interesting that the moat was built for protection, but not from armies, from nature. So I think in the end, we all still know Mother Nature is still the strongest, far and away. So anyway, that's it. Build yourself a moat. Don't flood. All right. Have a good one. Peace, love, This has been a production of SMEB LC Enterprises. Please give us a thumbs up, share us with others, and come back next week for another leg of our journey. Thank you for spending some of your valuable time and energy with us today. This is also a great time to reach out to someone in your life and just ask them, how are you doing? Don't wait until next week. And remember, it is always powerful to say, I have questions.